Let's take a look at the Sunday games here for week 12. Dave, you and I are each going to give 3 starts of the week. Why don't you kick us off with your first start of the week for week 12?
So it might be a little bit obvious. What I'm going to do is start with the obvious guys and get progressively deeper with each guy we discuss here. But Isiah Pacheco going up against Las Vegas, I see a lot of trepidation and people are concerned because last year we saw Isiah Pacheco in this like really fun role. And then all of a sudden, Jerick McKinnon came out of nowhere and just took that role away from him and was the more valuable guy that was getting the passing down work and was getting the red zone work. But what if Jerick McKinnon is a 31-year-old running back? Well, he is. And
What
he has
a
this year as he did last year. I mean, last year we saw this unbelievable juice late in the season that surprised so many people. And from what I've seen this year, Jerick McKinnon just doesn't have that. So Pacheco's role is increasing throughout the year where people are expecting it to dissipate. Weeks 1 through 3, he saw between 42 and 51% of the snaps. Weeks 4 through 8, he saw 54 to 63% of the snaps. And over the last 2 weeks, he has seen 61 and 68% of the snaps. Meanwhile, McKinnon's snap share hasn't changed at all, staying relatively flat between like 25-35% in just about every single game this season. What really surprises me, though, is that Isiah Pacheco is more involved in the passing game, and not just by like a little bit, substantially more involved. Last year, he saw 2.3% target share. This year, that's up to 8%. He's seen over 3 times as many targets as he did last season. And then looking at the matchup, Las Vegas has given up almost 25 points per game to running backs. That's 5th most in the NFL. So people are just waiting for Jerick McKinnon to come take this role. I don't think it's going to happen. We talked about this on our rest of season running back show a couple of weeks ago. I am really bullish on Isiah Pacheco for the rest of the season. And this week, with this matchup against Las Vegas, it could be very lucrative for him. I have Isiah Pacheco ranked ahead of Rachaad White, who has been on an absolute heater. I've got him ahead of Bijan Robinson, which sounds crazy, but, going up against New Orleans, and Bijan isn't really seeing the role that we had hoped for. I've got him ahead of Joe Mixon going up against Pittsburgh, and I've got him ahead of Saquon Barkley going up against New England. I've got Isiah Pacheco ranked as a back-end RB1 this week.
wow. Wow. I mean, so, okay, I did the woo, but I do actually have him 1 spot ahead of Bijan Robinson as well. But I've got him as my RB15. And while I think Isiah Pacheco is he's very startable this week. What keeps worrying me is you're right that maybe Jerick McKinnon isn't taking over a bunch of the passing down snaps or stealing too much work. And I'm curious where this goes with the Chiefs because those wide receivers have been so bad. The upside hasn't been there as of late. And I mean, we saw it this last game. Isiah Pacheco is one of his best rushing games of the year. He still finishes as the running back 23 in PPR with just 10.1 points. I see the stretch of games here from week 3 to week 7 where he got a good amount of passing work. And then just recently, it seems like it's died off, Dave. So are you expecting that to kind of come back into the fold here because of just how untrustworthy these wide receivers have been?
Yeah, I mean, it's really just been the last 2 weeks that he's seen that target share go down a little bit, but it's not like those targets are going Jerick McKinnon's way. They just haven't really been targeting running backs as much because of the game script. I mean, I'm looking more early in the year. Not even early in the year, all but the last 2 games. He was averaging 3.5 targets per game, which is way more than we saw last year, where he was getting almost no involvement. We saw the shades of that in the postseason, where he started getting involved as a pass catcher a little bit. And yeah, last week, the production wasn't there. He only had 1 catch and 89 yards.
He was good. He was
looked great.
good
Yeah.
too.
And
I was
he
totally
stumbles into
shocked.
the end zone. We're singing a completely different tune because then he's looking at a 16, 17 point game. So much of a running back's production comes down to whether they can get in the end zone or not. And Las Vegas is allowing a running back to score in almost every single game this year. So I think this is going to be just a smash spot for Pacheco.
Yeah, I think this kind of just ends up being the idea of starting running back, good offense. They should be ahead early against Las Vegas here. The Kansas City Chiefs have been one of the weirdest enigmas in the NFL this year. That they have, I believe it was the lowest amount of points in the fourth quarter of any team in the NFL. Super strange, just very, very strange. It scored nothing, I believe, in the second half against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Their identity has flipped on its head. Like 2 years ago, they had Tyreek Hill there, and they were this high-flying, throw the ball all over the place offense. Last year, the entire offense flowed through Travis Kelce. This year, we're seeing Travis Kelce doesn't look like himself. Maybe partying too late at Taylor Swift concerts, showing up a little hungover on game
don't start
day.
that
I don't
narrative.
know what it is, but Travis Kelce doesn't look like himself. The wide receivers are terrible. This team is winning games because of their defense and because of their rushing attack with Isiah Pacheco. And it's a very different offense. They're not hanging up 45 points every single week. They are just kind of grinding it out with Pacheco and making plays on defense and hanging around until they can close them out at the end of games. But also, this team is 3 drop passes away from a perfect record. I mean, you look at every single loss
I
they've had so
know.
far. Week 1, it was the Kadarius Toney drop on first down that cost him a game. The game against Denver, Sky Moore had the drop, and then
Sky
just
Moore.
last week we saw Marquez Valdes-Scantling wide open for the go-ahead touchdown, and he just dropped that. This team is literally 3 drop passes away from being 10-0 on the year.
Yet they still won't give Rashee Rice more snaps.
Oh, don't even
Make
get
it
me
make
started.
sense.
Don't get me started.
Make it make sense, David. All right, let me give you my first start of the week here for the Sunday slate of games, and he's back. Talking about Kyren Williams, I've got him ranked as my running back 21 on the week. He was just activated off the IR, designated to return. The Rams waived Darrell Henderson. So this isn't just them bringing Kyren Williams back. Darrell Henderson is gone, and that was the guy who was getting the primarily most or all of the passing game usage. And here in week 12, you're potentially looking at no Cooper Kupp dealing with an injury, or he could play but still be limited. So you're kind of, Dave, hopping in the time machine and going back to this Rams offense that was being funneled to Puka Nacua and Kyren Williams. And you could potentially just have more of the same of what we had earlier in the year. And I know we had talked about it a bunch of times where you can think that a player may not be the best at football. Like Kyren Williams may not be the best runner of the ball, but the usage he gets in that offense when Matt Stafford looks good and the passing game usage just works for fantasy football. And if they get in close and he gets, that's the only thing that might give me some trepidation here, is that if they get in close and all of a sudden you see the bigger running back, Royce Freeman, come in and start taking away some of those end zone touches, that's where you run into a little bit of a problem. But I think that between those 20s, you're going to see plenty of passing game usage for Kyren Williams. The Cardinals are giving up the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs over the last 4 weeks. And I think with Kyler Murray being back under center for the Cardinals, I think you are going to see a bit more passing back and forth in this game. 2 teams that don't have very good defenses, 2 teams that are going to be likely very pass heavy. And we forget Kyren Williams is the running back 4 in fantasy over the first 6 weeks of the season. I know he's been gone for a little bit, but I am going to trust him this week and put him back in my lineup here in week 12.
I mean, he's the RB4 in points per game. I think you got to plug him into your lineup. What I want to see them do, though, is revert more, not even to like the 100% snap share usage that we saw early in the season, but the targets that we saw early in the season. 10 targets in week 2, 7 targets in week 3. That was great to see. And then in his final game, the one that he got injured, he saw 20 carries and didn't see a single target in the game. So I want to see him kind of go back to using him more as a pass catching weapon. He isn't a great rusher, but we saw Tampa Bay do this. Rachaad White early in the season was a very inefficient running back. So they said, okay, well, we're just not going to run you between the tackles anymore. Go line up out wide. We're going to throw bubble screens to you and kind of use that as like an extension of our run game. And it has been amazing for Rachaad White's value. Like I said, he's been on a heater lately. So, a lot of people, will remember what I said early in the season about Kyren Williams, but I think people forgot how productive he was. I actually just went out and traded for Kyren Williams in a league just a few days ago. The Joe Burrow manager lost Joe Burrow. I had Patrick Mahomes and Joshua Dobbs on my team, so I flipped Patrick Mahomes and in return got Kyren Williams and Zay Flowers in a single quarterback league. If that's what people are selling Kyren Williams for now, because we haven't seen him in 4 or 5 weeks and people forgot, I'll gladly buy the discount. I think he immediately kind of goes back into that low-end RB1 discussion once he's back on the field.
And I will say he's good for this week, but the next couple of weeks get really, really scary. Got Cleveland, Baltimore, then a decent matchup against Washington, and then they go up against New Orleans.
Call
and
me
then,
crazy. I like the Baltimore matchup because if they're trailing in the game, that's when you're seeing going to get 7-10 checkdowns like we saw early in the season. That's what we want to see for Kyren Williams. We don't want to see them when they're sitting with a lead, feeding him the ball. We want Kyren Williams in a role where they are playing from behind and he is gobbling up checkdown work.
Yeah, the thing is that Baltimore hasn't really been scoring a ton. They've just been very efficient with the way they're doing things and controlling the clock. And anyway, that's a little too far down the line. But anyway, start Kyren Williams
this week,
week
absolutely.
12. I want to let you guys know, once again, we've got our awesome Black Friday sale going on here over at Football Guys. And right now, it's the time to really just Bear down. You see what I did there, Dave? Bear down. Chicago Bears. Yeah, that was for you.
That's the Bears
I don't
fight
know.
song.
Is that the Bears song? Okay,
Yeah,
I had no
I could
idea
sing all
what
the
that
words if you
was.
really want to hear it.
I'd really rather if you didn't. I'd really rather if you did not. But right now is the time to get serious about your fantasy playoffs that are right here on the horizon. The best way to do that is with all of the great tools, rankings, and custom advice that we have over at footballguys.com. And right now we've got our Black Friday sale going on. You get 20% off your first year of a Football Guys subscription. And guess what? It's going to run all the way to next year when we do the Black Friday sale again. And you're going to keep getting that 20% discount or more. Who knows? Next year it might be more. We don't know. But you're going to have that basically lifetime discount. Just continue going through this cycle. You get 20% off merchandise as well. And we've got this offer going all the way through until Monday, November 27th. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can scan the QR code here on the screen or just click the link in the show description and start winning your league today. Dave, who's your second start of the week here in week 12 on the Sunday slate of games?
Well, speaking of bear down, I'm going to start Jordan Addison this week, going up against the Chicago Bears. Justin Jefferson, it doesn't sound like he's going to come back. Obviously, we're recording this on
this week,
Wednesday afternoon. Yeah, who knows when this show
He's not coming back this week. Don't put that out into the universe. Thank you.
Things could change. Who knows? But they've got to bye next week, so I'm guessing that they're going to take it kind of slow. We saw him kind of saying, I don't care about your fantasy teams. I'm going to come back when I'm healthy. We saw that little outburst on Twitter yesterday. But I don't think we see Justin Jefferson in week 12. And Addison, this blows my mind. I mean, I don't know why I have to talk about Addison as a start of the week. His consensus ranking right now is wide receiver 33. Since Justin Jefferson has been out of the lineup, he is the wide receiver 9. Wide receiver 13, if we want to look at a per game basis. He's been crushing it. I don't know what I'm missing, why people are suddenly ranking Jordan Addison as more of a wide receiver 3 when he's been putting up wide receiver 1 production. Chicago's been okay against wide receivers, and they kept Jordan Addison to 12 points last time they played in week 6, but I'm just looking at the usage. I'm looking at the talent. We know he's a talented player. First round pick who has shown some incredible bursts, just some showcase some incredible skills so far this year. Pulling 7.4 targets per game since Jefferson's been out of the lineups. I'm really bullish on Jordan Addison this weekend. I'm starting him ahead of Cortland Sutton, Chris Godwin, Tyler Lockett, Marquise Brown, DeAndre Hopkins. He's inside my top 20. I don't really understand this consensus ranking as wide receiver 33. Sure, there's some questions about Joshua Dobbs, but we have seen Chicago's defense is terrible. Their offense is able to put some points up. I think this is going to be a little bit of a shootout where both offenses are going back and forth, and Jordan Addison is the clear wide receiver 1 on this team when Jefferson isn't in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of it here. I do think that there's going to be... So if you look at the last 3 games here with Josh Dobbs under center, Jordan Addison's been the wide receiver 29, 34, and 49. He's the wide receiver 35 since week 9. So I do sort of get the wide receiver 3 label here for Addison. It doesn't seem like that connection has totally been there with Dobbs. But at the same time, he's also gone up against the New Orleans Saints, where he's had Marshawn Lattimore on him. He went up against the Denver Broncos, where he had Pat Surtain on him, and that Denver Broncos secondary has gotten a lot better as the season has gone on. So I do see that here with Chicago this week. I mean, here we go. I'm going to expose myself. Is Jalen Johnson still on the field?
He had AJ Terrell.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's at
is Jalen Johnson still healthy for the Bears?
He is, yeah. And he hasn't been quite as good this year. It seems like he's kind of phoning it in until he gets that contract. So I'm not too concerned about Jalen Johnson. But even with Joshua Dobbs, the production hasn't been there, but he's still pulling 7 targets per game. So I'm still excited about the usage here. Obviously, we're not going to be looking at a Kirk Cousins quality or quantity of targets, but I think Joshua Dobbs, we saw him, consistently making Marquise Brown a top 24 receiver. I think he could do the same with Jordan Addison.
And I mean, he's very startable this week, especially in a game that should go back and forth quite a bit here. I'm going to give you my second start of the week, and I'm also going with a rookie wide receiver that plays for a purple team. Look at that. So many similarities, Dave. I'm going with Zay Flowers. I've got him ranked as my wide receiver 24 for the week. And I mean, let's just start with the most obvious thing. The Ravens have no Mark Andrews this week, and Isaiah Likely, I know, jumps into that role, but he hasn't quite been the same guy this year in his place. I know in the previous season, Isaiah Likely looked awesome in place of Mark Andrews. This year, not so much. And now the offense, they've got to find a good passing weapon. And I know that a lot of us, we want to wish that into existence for guys like Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham. And I'm not saying that they look bad. They are good stashes to have. I don't know that you're going to have those guys be the main targets that are leading this offense. Zay Flowers was drafted for a reason. And even when all of the players have been healthy on this offense, Zay Flowers has been the main wide receiver for Lamar Jackson. Go back to last week, and I know the end numbers didn't look pretty without Mark Andrews, but you're also looking at a team that had to adjust on the fly. Now going into this week, they're likely going to be building this offense around Zay Flowers and what they can do to get the ball in his hands. Just last week, he had a 30-yard touchdown called back. It was a screenplay, gets called back on Dave, potentially the worst holding call that I have seen in the history of the NFL. It's just absolutely terrible, or at least top three, whatever. Let's be reasonable. But oh my gosh. And so I get it. We want to see Odell Beckham Jr. and Rashad Bateman do well. I do think what they're going to end up doing is take some attention away from Zay Flowers. And it's going to be more so of, you don't know who's getting the ball in this Ravens offense, but I do believe that Zay Flowers is going to be the best option for Lamar Jackson and this Ravens offense. Going up against the Chargers, who are allowing the second most fantasy points to wide receivers this season, fire up Zay Flowers in week 12.
Yeah, completely in agreement with everything you say there. And I'm just going to lead right into my really deep start of the week, Odell Beckham. And I think Zay Flowers, I clearly obviously have him ahead of Zay Flowers. I like Zay Flowers as well in this matchup. But if you're getting a deeper league or looking at some injuries and you're getting a little bit more desperate, Odell Beckham cracks my top 40 this week. He's seeing his role start to grow slowly, but he has seen 7 targets in 2 of his last 3 games. And I just got to say, he looked fast last week. I mean, that was like the fastest I have seen Odell Beckham Jr. look in a long time. He's kind of been this like clunky veteran for the last few years. And now, he's almost 2 full years removed from his knee injury. And we might see him get some of that athleticism back that we haven't seen over the last few years. This was the first 100-yard game that Odell Beckham had since week 6 of 2019. Can you believe that, Alfredo? That's how far removed we are from another 100-yard game from Odell Beckham. And really what it comes down to, no Mark Andrews. Los Angeles is getting torched through the air. I think you might have mentioned this, but they're giving up 41.4 points per game to opposing wide receivers, which is the second most in the league. I think there's going to be a lot of offense in this game. I do like Zay Flowers. I've got him ahead of Odell Beckham, but if you're looking for somebody a little bit deeper, somebody to plug in your flex spot or in your 14, 16 team leagues, I've got Odell Beckham ahead of Gabe Davis. I've got him ahead of Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson, and even Jacoby Myers, who hasn't really shown much of a connection so far with Aiden O'Connell. So, yeah, Odell Beckham might be back into the conversation of fantasy relevance.
I'll finish this off here. I'm taking a look at Josh Downs this week. And I know this is a guy that we've probably forgotten about a little bit because the Colts were on a bye last week, which also he could very well be out still on your waiver wire if nobody was paying attention to that over the past week or so. But Josh Downs, I've got him ranked as my wide receiver 33 this week. And you go back, look at weeks 1 through 8. He was the wide receiver 36 through that time span, averaging 12.5 points per game. That's easily a guy that you can start every single week in your wide receiver 3 spot or in your flex, especially in PPR leagues. And then when you look at his last 4 healthy games, he was really starting to pick things up, Dave. He was averaging 6 receptions for 79 yards in each of those games. Then the knee injury started to give him some issues. The Colts are coming off a bye week where Downs has had the opportunity to rest up, get healthy, be ready to play. And now they've got Tampa Bay this week, who the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary has been notoriously bad this season. They've been allowing the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers since week 8. And specifically, if we want to look at the matchup that Josh Downs has this week, he's going to be facing undrafted rookie Christian Isiah, who is a safety, but also plays a bit of that nickel cornerback. don't who? You just reminded me of my favorite joke where you're like, someone at Football Guys is an owl.
Who?
Ha! Thanks for indulging me there. But Josh Downs, man, he's got himself a nice matchup this week. I think he's a guy that a lot of us have forgotten about, and he is an easy plug and play wide receiver 3 for week 12.